Hello, friends. I, one sec. Good morning. Hello. Ooh, try chatting with Steven. He's live. I messaged him and he said that he would be interested in chatting. Yeah, ask me for advice. Andrew, then. I love coffee, but I'm taking a break from coffee because I'm worried that I drink too much and it like fucked me up. But yeah. Gorgeous and based. Thank you. Mm. All of my hobbies are male brain. Literally all of them. I'm gonna get an orange. Okay. I actually got two oranges, so I lied a little bit. Um, I like coding and Dungeons and Dragons and World of Warcraft and board games. Though board games, I think lots of women like them. I think in general, I consider myself very male brained. I'm gonna eat this delicious orange. This orange actually bitter. Tragic. My disappointment is immeasurable, and my day is ruined. Is that cuneiform? Is that what that writing is called? Bro, oh my god. What is your name in cuneiform? Okay, how do I know if a girl likes me? If she isn't super responsive texture, but she likes hanging out. Um, that's a good sign. I mean, if she likes hanging out with you, then she likes hanging out with you. Um, is this like a sexual relationship already? Or is it, or is she just hanging out with you as like a friend? Because that's an important question. If she likes hanging out with you, but like has not made any sexual advances to you, um, probably not into you sexually or not ready to do that. Cuneiform, more like cuneiform, right? Am I right or am I right? Okay, hold on. Yo, Azarath, you laughed at the funny. Good, I'm glad. Yeah, I'm very. I am muted. I muted myself so that I could um figure out my microphone. Listen, guys, I'm not a real streamer. Oh shit. Okay, hold up. Destiny wants to talk. Whoa, hello, Steve. Not much. The trans community hates me. It's terrible. Okay, what did I say that was rowdy? Destiny. Name one rowdy thing. No, no, no. Okay, well, a little bit. I think that the desire to pass is sort of it's a goal that I think is elevated unfairly oftentimes or to the detriment of the people who are pursuing it. Just because I think that passing okay. Yeah. No, it's not indefensible at all. Yeah, and that's a big part of it. The other part of it is like I tweeted, trans women look like men. That's what I tweeted. That's my spicy take, which I think that like there are different ways to interpret this. The sort of pedantic way that's like annoying is to be like, well, you're saying that trans women look like the average man, which is not true. I'm just saying that like I don't think that trans women pass as a general rule, and that's my take. Is that like insane? Yeah, be very personal. I think that when I'm like on camera and when I can get like my makeup right and the angles right and I can like focus really hard on trying to pass, I think that I can do like a pretty good job of it and that I will pass probably like 99%. And maybe there's it's like a little bit off sometimes. But oh boy. I have. And I think that that is like, it gets to the heart of how passing is sort of a difficult issue because most people who pass don't pass all the time. And I think that like I fall into this category where like no matter how hard I try, there'll be like some percentage where I can't get to like 100%. Um, and I think that like for most trans women did not start transition at 14, right? And they didn't, yeah, I did. And I also have spent like tens of thousands of dollars on surgery, like on my jaw, for example. And yeah, I didn't get like full FFS, but I did get some surgery. And even with all of that, I still don't like fully pass. So I think that it is like not crazy to say that one, this is like an unattainable goal for a lot of trans women. And then when you like set ourselves up for failure by establishing it as like a baseline to be seen as like valid or like legitimate. And I also think that like we would do a lot better if we sort of accepted ourselves and didn't work ourselves up into these communities where we're sort of all clapping each other on the back and saying like, oh, you passed so well, you're so great. Because I think we like insulate ourselves in a bubble where we're really not like adapted to reality. And it makes us really susceptible to people who being like, you don't pass, and that just being like crushing. So yeah. Yeah, I think that trans people, we really get it from both sides. Where, on one hand, I can sort of come off as this like ultra SJW person because I'm telling people, like, you don't need to pass to be happy. And that should be, like, if anything, an ancillary goal. But at the same time, when I came out and started transitioning, I think that like becoming a woman, trying to present a certain way, it really meant a very different thing than it does today. And I think that the conception of what a woman is on the left has totally evaporated. So, like, a woman doesn't have to look any sort of way. And then we're kind of lost. We're like, when we erase the boundaries for this category, no one knows what they're doing. I want to say that, like, it's not a bad thing to try to pass and to like in many ways like really care for yourself and to try to make yourself presentable. Those are all valuable things, but I think that people do get caught too much up on trying to reach like a goal. And this is another thing, this is going to lead into the other trans drama that I've been on, where like I've talked about how I feel disappointed in my transition. And when I say that, people get really angry at me and they say things like, will you pass? Or you look really good. So how can you be disappointed? And the reason I'm disappointed is because I've gone through all of this effort. And although that I look a lot more feminine than I used to, the mental health component hasn't really improved that much. It has improved a little bit, but that I think is the real goal of transition is to improve the mental health state. And I think that when we like replace passing for that, when we substitute the goal of mental health improvement with the goal of passing, one, it sets people up for failure. But two, it also means that like we kind of lose track of what really matters. And then when people are struggling, those voices just get shut out because it's like, well, you shouldn't be upset. You have no right to be upset because you've achieved this status. Hmm. He sounds French. Hmm. I mean, it's complicated because transition is like the transition we're talking about is a medical intervention. And I and my parents made the decision to have that medical intervention when I was an adolescent. So you're talking about maybe putting your son on meds. The problem is that when you transition, you also introduce all of these other issues. So, like, I grew up in a rural Colorado town, and as a result of transitioning, I ended up, I think, very socially ostracized. And so, while there were certain advantages, like, yes, it's helped me pass better, there's also been disadvantages. So I spent a lot of time on the internet growing up. I didn't have a lot of friends. And these are things that I think affected me a lot going forwards. And so I look back at that and the pros and cons of transitioning. And I wonder, maybe this helped me pass a little bit better now. But if passing isn't the goal and this has had like negative, detrimental mental health effects, maybe it wasn't worth it to transition when I did. And so this kind of, yeah, maybe when I think like transitioning later can be definitely a good decision. Um, I do. And it's like part of why I think that passing should not be like the only goal. Because I think that when passing becomes the primary goal and we forget this mental health aspect, I think we can sometimes encourage people to take actions that maybe on the whole balance wise would be worse. And that's, historical counterfactual. I don't know if it would be worse, but mhm, mhm, mhm. Well, I'll answer this in two ways. One is like with anecdote, and to say that a lot of trans women that I know who pass beautifully still struggle a lot with mental health issues. And then I don't know if you've looked into the literature on this. There's this like great systematic review that came out in 2021 that looks at all of these studies on HRT and its benefits for mental health. And what it finds is that all of the studies point in one direction. So, like, overwhelmingly, the studies indicate that there's probably a benefit to mental health with transition. However, there's a catch, and the catch is that the studies overall have like pretty weak power as far as strength of evidence. So there are a lot of surveys, there are a lot of studies that don't take into effect confounding variables and all of these other issues. And so we're not actually that confident in the benefit of HRT. And I think that's another reason to be cautious. Mm-hmm. And we have much less evidence for adolescents. So, like, think of all the evidence we have for trans people and reduce it by like 1/100th. That's what we have for adolescents. So I think that's why when I say like do not transition, part of that's just like dysphoria on my part and being like dramatic. But I think that like the underlying kernel of truth is that like you should be very careful if you're going to transition. And if you do, I would encourage people to make sure that they have other mental health aspects like checked out and that their goals are very realistic, that they're not like wanting to be, you know, a beautiful woman or like an anime girl or a porn star or something. Because realistically, like there's a high probability that you will not fully pass. I don't know. I, I would say that I think transition has helped my mental health a little bit. Um, but that's very hard to like disentangle, right? Right, exactly. And I think that like in the strongest version of the counterfactual, you ask the question like, would I be healthier if instead of transitioning, I just went to like get cognitive behavioral therapy and like made a bunch of friends and was like very pro-social and built up this network of support and all of these things. And like maybe in that, then yeah, I would be happier. But that's also like a quite unrealistic scenario. And so it's hard to tell. But yeah, I think that there's not really a place for a lot of trans people in society. And I think the reason for that is because trans women are trying to become women and that is very hard to do. Oftentimes they end up in a spot in society where they're not really seen as women by people. Um, and so they're just constantly pursuing this goal and failing. I think it would be wonderful if there was like if trans people could just be like accepted as they are, maybe as like a third gender, and to be like, listen, you're trans, you don't fully pass, but that's okay, and we're going to support you, and we're going to allow you the freedom to present the way that you want without increasing or adding on all of this extra baggage that comes with the expectations to fit into a very specific role of what it means to be a woman. Mhm. Mhm. I can be like, her philtrum is too long. Mhm. Mhm. She's not, yeah. Well, I think you're exactly right. I think these people, trans people in general, want to be the opposite sex, right? And yeah. Mhm. Yeah, no, I mean, I think that if I can imagine how some people would respond to what I'm saying, someone might say that, like, well, Taff, you're saying that I should just like be happy and accept like that my body is sort of masculine, but if I could do that, there would be no problem. Like I wouldn't transition at all if it was as simple as just like accepting my masculinity and being okay with that. And so I recognize that. And I also recognize that, like, what the goal of transition for a lot of people is to become, the opposite sex. What I'm, but like, and this is maybe like where I get sort of controversial, but like, I don't think that's possible. Like, I don't think that like a trans woman can become a woman in a real sense. I think that she can become like someone who looks like a woman such that everyone treats her that way. But I think that even that goal, like becoming someone who looks like a woman such that everyone treats you that way, is oftentimes like a very unrealistic goal. So I think that like what we should be doing is trying to manage dysphoria. And I think that like one of the ways you manage dysphoria is with. Mhm. Mm. Yeah, so going back to what I said about transition not fixing all of my problems, it's not just that I transitioned and that fixed one problem, the trans thing, and then I had other mental health issues. What I'm trying to communicate is that I transitioned and it didn't fix the trans problem. So I still had significant dysphoria. And sometimes people will say to me like, oh, well, you just like don't have dysphoria, this isn't an issue for you. And that going to be more, further from the truth. I have very intense dysphoria, and that's the problem. The problem is that I transitioned and that it helped a little bit with dysphoria, but it didn't really go as far as I think it was sold to me, as how far it would go. So, and in myself. Mhm. Yeah. Mhm.
Trans person ever. Do you think that would slowly start to change your mind where people start to, where not people, I'm sorry, where you start to think that like, okay, I'm starting to feel some alleviation of the dysphoria as opposed to being online where like your part of your identity is being a trans person?
Yeah, I do think so. So there are all of these variables in my life that I think
Hmm.
really amplify some of the dysphoria. So it's not just that I'm a very online person, but it's
Hmm.
also that like a lot of my online existence depends on me looking a certain way. And
Sure.
so, and I'm also like exposed to a lot of very beautiful people all the time. And
Hmm.
so I do think this is a big problem. I think it's not just a problem for me, it's especially a problem for me. But I think
Hmm.
that a lot of young people are in similar situations where they're exposed to a lot of a lot of stimulus that causes them to really doubt their body, you know, to feel very
Hmm.
insecure. And
Here's, can I ask a second question on that?
mhm,
And I don't envy your mind because this has to be impossible to sort through. But like, maybe is it possible that some of the things that you're experiencing and you think in your mind that these are dysphoria
mhm.
is actually just like female like dysmorphia, where the complaints you're having are like, I'm not a woman, people don't see me as a woman, you know, I'm people see me as a man, blah 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 blah, because you're like thinking about the beauty standards, the makeup, like how you present yourself. What if you have transitioned and you actually did it really well, and now what you're experiencing are just women problems, where they're like, you know, my makeup isn't good enough, I don't look feminine enough, I don't look like a woman. Like, do you think you would be able to disentangle those two ideas in your head of like, what is the problem of because like here's something that I think is possible for you. I don't know, you can tell me, right? But like, I feel like it's possible that you could go into the mirror and have you ever seen yourself ever? Have you ever thought in your mind, today I look like an ugly woman? Or are you always thinking, today I look like kind of a man? Like, have you ever felt like an ugly woman before, or do you always just feel manly? And then if that is the case, that no, I kind of just feel manly, is it possible then that you actually did transition really well and you've made it, but you just, in your mind, you don't have that feeling yet of like, well, I am a woman and sometimes I can look like an ugly woman, because you just default to thinking that you're a man. Does that make sense? Sorry, yeah, go for it.
Yeah, no, I think that's a really good point. I think that it is often very difficult to disentangle regular everyday insecurity from transition related dysphoria. I'll answer the question about, you know, whether I perceive myself as a man or an ugly woman in a second.
Mm-hmm.
But I think this is actually, and this is something I was trying to get to, it's an issue that a lot of people have, where I think a lot of people, a lot of young people are very insecure about themselves, and then they're exposed, or like, you know, people will talk to them and they'll be like, well, some of the time people feel really insecure because they're trans, and the solution is to transition, and transition is going to fix that insecurity. And so I
Mm-hmm.
think that like one of the issues is that transition is sort of like prescribed as the fix for this insecurity when it's not really. And this is like why I say, like, you know, why I made the tweet like, do not transition. And of course we talked about like the nuances to that, but I think that like when we're talking about these other issues, you have to really make sure that like you're not transitioning to fix those other issues. And I think that like a lot of people, they will pursue these goals of passing, right? And like you can never get to that 100%. You can get 99 or 98, 99, almost to 100, but you won't quite get there. And
Mm-hmm.
because you're pursuing this goal of passing and not actually fixing the insecurity, you're not actually improving your mental health. And so really like the passing is a distraction for these other issues. And so
Yeah, I don't disagree with any of that. And I think those are all really good conversations to have. I just think those are a little bit separate from trans things. This is one of the worries. Jesse Signal, I'm sure you know who this is, like writes about this a lot. This idea that like you can take a depressed teen that's a little bit confused and doesn't know 100% what they want to do in life, or you know what direction they should be heading, and they kind of get like swept into this trans stuff, and they're like, damn, like there's a whole community built for me. There's medications. There's a plan. Like there's some shit I can do. You know, depending
and that's
on,
very
you know,
comforting. That can feel
yeah, for
really
sure.
good,
Yeah.
especially
Yeah,
in the
for sure.
beginning.
And I think that can definitely be a problem. And I think that's something that has to be approached with great care. Yeah, I wouldn't disagree with that at all. But on the flip side, like if you are trans and you are looking for that, like it's important to know that like even if you head in that direction, like there's still going to be other problems that you have to solve, right? This isn't going to be a catch-all. Even if you do transition perfectly, like now you have to deal with all the problems of being a woman, which you know can probably feel like trans problems sometimes too, or just like all the things that go along with a life that you haven't even lived yet, right? Because if you are if you become a trans woman even at an early age of 14, you said you started a transition. Even at that, you're probably having to play a lot of catch up with girls that started playing with makeup when they were 9, girls that started to feel a certain way about boys when they were like 11 or 12, like all the different like female experiences that you hadn't even had yet that you're playing catch up on and everything else. It's just like there's just like so much shit going on all the time that Yeah, it's really complicated, whether you are or aren't even really trans.
Yeah, I agree. And this is why I give so much caution.
Hmm.
Okay,
I think it's fine to
trans
give
takes,
caution, but like when you're literally tweeting like, "Don't
do
transition,
not
it's a
transition,
mistake.
all caps. Okay,
I
part
hate
of
myself."
I fucking it's so frustrating. I don't know. It's very frustrating. On the internet, I tend to just like output a lot of shit and a lot
Hmm.
of like dysphoria and bad feelings.
Hmm.
Um, but I like never bring this up to like people that I hang out with in real life. Like
Sure.
I never talk about politics with like my IRL friends.
Hmm.
And so part of that is like a coping mechanism where like I don't want them to think that I'm crazy. So I just like let people on the internet think that I'm crazy.
Hmm.
But it is frustrating because I think that like my take about trans women in general not passing, I think is like accurate. And people are like giving me mental health checks on it where they're like, "Are you okay?" And I'm like, I don't think that thinking trans women don't pass as a rule is a mental health crisis. I think it's like basically what most people who aren't like woke believe. Like if you go and talk to people, most people will be like, yeah, like I think trans women are clockable and whatever their conclusion is from that.
Um,
So I don't think it's a crazy position to have this view of trans women or an unusual one even.
yeah, it's not crazy. I feel like the worlds that trans people live in, and everybody I know is online, so it's like so much. But I feel like the online versus the offline world of trans people is like so much different. That's why it's like so crazy to me that like when I'm on these online spaces where they're like talking about the trans genocide and how all trans people are being killed and blah 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 blah. But like in real life, like things seem so much more chill with like every person I've spoken to that is trans or that like has trans friends. Where like generally most of them have friends, they do decently. Like a lot of them are like completely invisible, like people don't even know. Um, yeah, I don't know. Yeah, maybe you just need to touch grass.
Just need to chill out. I mean, here's the
Yeah,
other
touch
thing is
grass.
that like
Yeah.
I think it goes both ways because I think that like these trans communities that are very insular and online and very very far left, I think
Hmm.
that they also like lose track of the reality. And
Hmm.
there's this like thing that happens in the brain and it's related to like the hedonistic treadmill. But it's also like the way that we understand our social status and the way that we understand our value is
Hmm.
very relative to the people around us. And
Yeah.
so if you're in like a trans polycule and like everyone around you is hyping you up saying that like you pass perfectly, and you don't actually, going out into the real world is going to be really really hard.
Yeah, I
And
agree. This is a problem that everybody has with everything. It's one of the I get really upset. People will post in that sex subreddit and people will say things like, "Oh, like my boobs are extremely lopsided. I have one A cup and one double D cup. Is anybody going to care?" And every single comment is like, "Nobody will care. Guys are just happy to see any boobs ever. Nobody's going to care. They all think it's going to be beautiful, blah blah blah." And it's like, "Bro, like I understand you guys are trying not to be mean, but like when this person goes out of the real world, like she's gonna get like a rude awakening when there are gonna be some people that do have like a big preference. And yeah, I do agree. I think that this I don't know if this even counts as a hot take, but like when people are like in like trans polycules or when it's like a community of like 7 trans people or whatever, I think that's bad. I think having like a mix of friends is probably good because it keeps you more grounded. But especially some of these like streamer houses where like I think like the fucking demon mama doe and like there's like 7 or 8 like trans people all living together. I think your brain can go into some really weird places if you don't have people to kind of ground you out a little bit.
I definitely think it can be. I saw this TikTok a while ago from a trans woman, and
Hmm.
she was upset because the person she was speaking to gendered her correctly, but she had the thought that even though they were gendering her correctly, referring to her with she and her, they didn't actually believe it. And
Yeah,
so we're at this point where people are like trying to intuit what's going on, not just from words, but what's actually going on in people's minds. And it's like destroying them. And I think that
kind of.
like
Yeah,
that
well,
mind reading is really dangerous. And I think it stems from this like this fragility where if you're not exposed to the fact that like some people are going to think you're a man and you're not going to
mhm,
pass to some people, like
mhm.
if you're not exposed to that, if you don't learn to accept that, you're not going to be able to function in society.
Yeah, I understand what you're saying. The pronouns one is more complicated. Maybe somebody can share my opinion on this in the future, but I think that giving pronouns or listing pronouns, I think is a mistake. I think it's always been a mistake. I think that the big deal about pronouns is that when I refer to you as a she or a he, what I'm doing when I utter that pronoun is I'm giving you a glimpse into my mind and how I view you. So if you're listening to me talking about you to another person, like, oh, I really like Tab, like she's super cool, that kind of like reinforcement of like how I view you, it coincides with the mental image that you have of yourself. Whereas when I'm saying like, oh yeah, Taff, he's cool, you know, I don't mind him, that's jarring because now there's this dissonance created where it's like, fuck, like you don't view me the way that I want to be viewed, and more importantly, the way that I view myself. That dissonance really bothers me. When we start giving pronouns, we're engaging in a form of delusion that I don't think actually makes the person feel better. Like, you don't want me to call you the right pronoun because you told me what your pronouns are. You want me to give the right pronoun because what I'm saying is showing that I have a mental image of you that is matching the mental image that you have of yourself. So I think that like if somebody is referring to somebody as like he or she, but they clearly don't pass, or something like that is going on, or the person feels like it's not like a legitimate usage of pronouns, or like, I don't think you actually view me that way at all, I can understand why people would feel irked. Now, obviously it's shitty to call somebody out or be like, oh, fuck you, like you don't view me the right way or whatever. But like I could understand getting somebody upset with that. But I think that the issue there is just how we ever treated pronouns of like, oh, give your pronouns and blah, blah, blah in the first place. I think it betrayed the whole purpose of why pronouns even mean what they mean, in my opinion.
That's a really interesting take. I'll have to think about that. I feel like the way that I think of pronouns is that they are a kind of like social nicety where when you use like a pronoun, what you're communicating is not necessarily that you like truly think of the person as a man or a woman or whatever, but basically that like you respect that person's agency to like decide for themselves what language should be used for themselves.
No, I totally reject that. I think that's bullshit. I know that that's like
I feel like that is how people use pronouns though.
That's people will say that, but I disagree. I just don't think that's the case. When somebody uses a pronoun, I don't think that you're looking for somebody to like respect your autonomy on language or any bullshit like that. I don't think so. I think what you're looking for is I want you to refer to me in a way that that matches my mental model of myself. Like if I told people, if I went around saying like, I really want to be referred to as handsome. I like, can you please, like, I want to do it. And then I hear people in conversation like, oh yeah, I know Steven, like he's a handsome guy. That's whatever. But if I hear somebody say it without me prompting them to, and I know that they have that feeling of it, and if I view myself that way and then they say it, that feels good to me. Because now I know that what you said, what you've uttered is indicative. Your mental state, your mental image of me matches my mental image of myself. That's why I don't believe in the whole like respect the autonomy of like the language and all that bullshit. I just don't believe it. I think that pronouns are just it's a cute little clever grammatical trick that gives you an insight into how somebody views somebody. That's how I view it. I think that's true.
Well, do you think it could be both and either one in different scenarios? Because I think that like when you are using the word she to refer to someone who like obviously doesn't look like a woman and maybe has no intention to, I think that what you're doing is like this social nicety. You're not really expressing like your mental model of the person. And I think that when you automatically reach for a pronoun, like if someone who's like super transphobic like automatically reaches for the pronoun she when they're describing me, I think what they're doing is giving me a glimpse into their mind.
Sure. I mean, there can be something nice that feels nice about the social nicety, but like, I could be wrong, but I feel like one of the most gender euphoric moments of any trans person in the history of all of trans people, dating back to the start of mankind, has got to be when Ben Shapiro was talking about, like Caitlyn Jenner, I don't remember, Bruce Jenner or whatever, when Shapiro was doing that and he was trying to misgender her and he fucked up and he said the pronoun that was actually in his mind of how
it might have been Laverne Cox.
It might have been Laverne, yeah, because you know that whoever he was referring to, he thought of that person as a woman, and he had to explicitly go out of his way to try to misgender that person after he fucked up doing it. I had to feel really good because you're like, I know you view me as a woman, and you're trying really, really, really hard not to play the game or whatever, but you do, like that's the image that exists in your head. I don't know, but yeah, obviously, I mean, all of it is complicated, and even if you are a trans person, that doesn't necessarily mean that you've like done like these huge like analysis of language and why do things feel the way they do. It's all like really complicated. I understand, of course, yeah.
I think that I was talking to that philosopher guy who I think you had on your stream and also Vosh debated about classic moment. I was in his like Twitter DMs immediately after the Vosh discussion, and I think that I don't exactly remember how I phrased it, but I said that like within progressive communities and within progressive cultures, the way people define woman is as like a person who like prefers to be referred to as a woman or something like
Yeah.
that, which is
Yeah,
like
they do.
it's a
Cringe.
definition that is like almost meaningless. But I think that like pronouns also take on a unique like definition within very progressive communities. And that's why people like do use neopronouns or like it or dear or whatever, because like it's no longer about this like automatic reflex and more
Mhm.
about this kind of like ability to exert your identity on others and have them refer to you as you prefer.
Yeah, I guess I go back to like I think that's what names are for. Having somebody refer to me as name. I mean, a name is one thing because it shows respect, but I think the pronoun is a little different. It reminds me of that the ContraPoints thing that she said a long time ago. That like something that can feel very othering is when you're with a group of like very progressive cis women and they're like, okay, everybody go around and say your
This has
pronouns, and
happened
you
to me
know,
in real life
yeah, and
where
the
I've like talked to
only
someone
reason
and she's like, "Oh, what are your pronouns? By the way, let's have a pronoun check for everyone." And I'm like, I want to die.
exactly, yeah, and it's like I'd rather just go to some bar with a bunch of like redneck Nazis where they just call me she, because that's like it just feels so much better than like the pronoun circle shit. So yeah, I don't know. Yeah, it's complicated, but
It's yeah, it's brutal. I'm friends with like all cis people in real life right now.
okay, yeah.
All my IRL friends are cis, and it used to
Mhm.
be that they were all trans. And I had the thought, I need to get some perspective because I feel like trans people are like making me crazy. And then I made what?
Online trans people, clarify that, because I feel like real
No,
life trans people are
both.
so much more chill, unless you're like in a fucking college fucking with, 100 non-binary women or whatever. But
But then
or do you know a lot
I
of
moved.
crazy trans people?
Listen, I moved to
Uh huh.
Texas of all places and made friends with cis people.
Hmm.
And turns out I'm just as unhinged. So
Sure. Well, I mean, you might be unhinged, but the question is, are you unhinged because you're trans, or are you just unhinged because you're taftaged? You know?
true, true. Good point. Okay. Those are some of my crazy takes. I'm surprised you didn't push back more regarding like HRT and me saying that it's like the evidence is not that strong.
It's not. I always fight against people that say that because you have to couch your language very carefully. Anytime somebody wants to come on and be like, oh no, we have very, very good scientific evidence concerning adolescent. Blah, stop. Whatever you're about to say is not true. We don't have very strong evidence for almost anything regarding trans people, even adults for transitioning. Like in terms of doing this en masse, all of it is pretty new. The therapies and the like the actual therapy, not just the drug stuff, but they're talking all of that too. All of it is very new. All of it is experimental. Everybody's trying new stuff. Like opening this up to kids en masse is very new. All of it is super new. So anybody that comes out and tries to say like 100% like, oh yeah, this is obviously blah blah blah, like no, that's bullshit. Nobody knows that. Like it's all still new. We have to be honest about it, and yeah, and be careful like going forward.
Okay, that's interesting. I feel similarly. And it's one of the reasons why I think that people, especially adults, they should have like the freedom and the right to do with their body, you know, what they will. And part of that is, I think, the right to take hormones if you want. But I also think that, like, because the evidence is so new, I think it is okay if I look back at my own personal experience and then tell people, like, I don't recommend this, or I only recommend this if you've already explored these avenues.
Yeah, I think that proceed with caution I think is really good, especially because it's so fucking politically charged today. And it seems like there's a like fuck, somebody else said something really politically incorrect that I super agree with, but it really does feel like if I'm like a white cis male, my identity sucks online for like farming anything. But as soon as I throw that non-binary tag on, or hopefully this doesn't happen, but like becoming trans, it unlocks so much community and openness and everything to you that like as cringe as it is to say, like white men don't really have access to anymore unless you're gonna go be a Tate fan or like a Jordan Peterson fan or whatever. And I'm worried that that type of stuff is becoming a little bit too much. Um, yeah, I got really traumatized getting all the emails from trans women about like all the fucking NB women on college campuses now. That like I thought that like maybe there'd be like some problems with it, but like email after email after email is telling me that like 98% of these spaces are like NB women or NB they them Zers or whatever. That like there's very few trans people even like seeking transition in these spaces. That like finding a trans person that's trying to medically transition was rare in a lot of these college trans support groups, and it's like what the fuck. So yeah, be careful. The online shit is yeah.
It gets pretty crazy. Yeah, the trans community has just changed so much since when I came out. And I
Mhm.
think that It is definitely frustrating. I think it has to do with this like tearing down of all sorts of boundaries and like definitions and all these like ideas of the past, right? Like I think when I was transitioning and even before then,
Hmm.
people who are trans women, when they wanted to transition, they had a real sense in their mind of what it meant to be a woman and
Hmm.
vice versa with men and the kinds of expectations that
Yeah.
came with that. And
Hmm.
those are valuable. Like those stories of like what it means to be a good man,
Hmm.
those are really valuable. And without them, I think that's how we get people like Andrew Tate, these like red pillars who are filling this void where for, decades we've sort of eroded the idea of what it means to be a man. We have torn down these shibboleths that existed of the past. And sometimes that was good. Sometimes those ideas of masculinity were toxic. But
Hmm.
losing those, especially in the digital age where the relationships we have with people are so different, I think that there are all these characters like Andrew Tate and other red pill type people who have come in to fill that void, and it's been really destructive. And I think it's one of the reasons why we need these kinds of categories of, what it means to be a man or a woman to exist and to have real cultural value.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, I don't disagree. It's really weird that the crowd that acknowledges it, like we need representation for Black people, for women, for all of these minority groups, is so important. But then when it comes to like white men, it's like fuck you guys, like you're all toxic rapists, and it's like okay, well, I don't know why you expect them to not need representation or all the same things that the minority people do, and then they get surprised when they all join like fucking Nazi Tate cult groups and everything. It's like okay, well,
Hang is pretty fucking crazy. I also think that like the Tate arrest is kind of was kind of inevitable, and it's crazy to me to see people like running insane lines of defense where they're like inventing stories for how he could be totally innocent, and it's like maybe he's innocent, but like
mhm.
everything that he said is like super incriminating and like not good.
Yeah, if they were
Does not
again,
indicate good things.
I'm glad this happened the way that it did because it's like so perfect because this would be one of those things where I was like, dude, if Biden or Hillary or if anybody had videos like this or anything, you guys would be making so much up. So it's really funny now that like my dream scenario came true where it's like he's got a video series on how to sex traffic and defraud women. And I wonder if you would believe that. And they're still like, no, I don't think it's true. I think he's being set up. And it's like, it couldn't be more obvious than this. Like, it's so obvious how much you guys are like meat riding. Like, it's insane. Yeah.
Yeah, fucking crazy.
But
Lizzo flute, huh?
what about it?
I think
That she shouldn't have played it, that she should have respected the instrument.
exactly that there's a sacredness. I mean, did you see the video where she's like twerking and
Twerking?
she's yeah,
Oh my
that should be
god.
illegal. She should be
Wow. Based
um
conservative guy. Hey, thank you.
okay, no. I mean, I think it's like it gets back to this like respectability thing and this kind of I think that if she just weren't did something else, I think that would have been better. I don't think it's like too much of an ask to say that like even if you don't share these values of like sacredness and respecting like this object that has some historical significance, even if you don't share those values, I think it is like okay to respect people who do and to just like not engage in behavior that's going to annoy them if like not engaging that behavior doesn't come as any real detriment, which I don't think there was any like reason why she was forced to do that. So I think it was I think it is like okay to criticize her a little bit for that.
Eh. I feel
uh,
like musicians and playwrights and actors have always been fucking degenerate fucks throughout all of human history. People seem to think that like Beethoven or Mozart were like these, like they lived in these very posh lives and everybody looked up and respected them. But I'm pretty sure that like all of these people in entertainment have always been the degenerates of society, just like the AIDS-infested rockers of the 60s and 70s. So were the disgusting filth of the composers and everything of like the
okay, I wouldn't
past.
say Lizzo's
Um,
disgusting filth, to be
no,
clear.
but I'm just saying that like I think that we revere old musicians and we don't even understand sometimes like how they were treated in society, the lifestyles they lived, and then we like hold them on these weird pedestals where it's like twerking with a flute, and it's like I don't know, I don't think it's that big a deal. But I mean, to each their own, whatever.
Well, Lizzo's like a very respected flautist, right? Like she's very
Yeah, she's
talented.
very, very, very good. I was surprised because I cringed a little bit because I thought I was going to listen to her play and it's like, oof, high school student. But you can listen to her play like one run of like 16th notes and listen to her breath and everything. It's like, okay, this at the very least she's a very good college player. And I think she was even better than that. So yeah.
Yeah, so I think that like she has within her the capacity to really give a lot of respect to this object. You know, I don't think she's
But
like
the
a,
twerking.
yeah, the twerk and the
But the
silvery dress
twerking.
or whatever, the
Oh
leotard,
no.
disgusting. No, I mean,
Uh-uh.
have you ever heard the term weird or Western educated?
Yes.
Yeah, yeah, industrialized, rich, democratic. I
Mhm.
think that like a lot of times we get in this bubble of like what is good or not good, what is appropriate or inappropriate actions. And we sort of forget like how unique our viewpoint is. Like if you go to India, there are temples that like you can't enter unless you've like fully bathed rigorously and you've like changed clothes and done all of these rituals. And
Okay.
I think that like that doesn't fully make sense to me. Like I don't fully understand the sacredness of this temple, but I do respect it as a custom. And I respect the sacredness of this place. And even though I don't fully understand why I have to do all of these things or why they're good necessarily, I think that like having that basic respect and being able to say, I don't understand, but I'm going to follow your traditions because it comes at no cost to me. I think that that is a valuable quality. And it's kind of one of the reasons why these big, you know, societies like the United States, these big multicultural societies are able to survive, is because people can say, listen, I don't fully get it, but I'm going to respect you. And I think that when Lizzo took this object, this flute,
Disrespected.
I think
Yeah.
like it is a little bit like she didn't have to do that. And she had within her the capability to be very respectful. And she had the other video where she's like, you know, in pajamas, which still isn't like great, but like no one really cared about the video of her in pajamas where she's just playing like calmly. It was the video of her twerking and the skimpily clad outfit that blew up. And I think that it speaks to the fact that it is really this like added layer of unnecessary sexualization, which I think could have been avoided. So I didn't think it was too crazy to be a little bit upset about it.
I don't. I don't. She was a good flute player. She played the flute. DJ Khaled playing that Bob Marley guitar was a bigger crime against music than anything fucking Lizzo did. So fuck it.
Maybe true.
Okay. Anything else?
There,
Wait, hold on. This is not
yes,
true. I just read the chat. You're not actually a Matt Walsh fan, are you?
there was like a week in March or something that I listened to his podcast every morning. I don't know if I'd say I'm a Matt Walsh fan, but I did
Okay.
listen to his podcast. And then
Millions of trans kids on puberty blockers. Millions, he said. Millions. After doing a full documentary on it. Millions. Do you see
yeah,
the
if you
poll
go
where
to
it's like
these,
Americans think that like 24% of fucking Americans are trans?
and it's like 30% are from New York, 30% are from California, and 30% are from Texas. And it's like,
Jesus.
yeah, the poll's just like insane. I think it's like the YouGov poll that is always
Mhm.
insane. I have other crazy opinions, but I don't want to take up too much of your time. Um,
You have roles for my one main room, right?
wait, what?
You have roles for my that main room I've got, right?
I do. So I
Okay.
can just
Yeah,
pop
whenever I'm there,
in
you can always just
and be
like jump in.
like,
Don't DM me, just like hop in and start screaming.
Steven,
Yeah.
Steven, tell me why I'm wrong. That's what I'm going to be like.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay,
Hell yeah.
amazing. Thank you, Destiny.
Okay. Have fun. See you later, buddy.
You too. What a chill guy. What a chill bro. Oh, Destiny is based. Bro, what was I gonna say? Oh, there are other opinions that I feel like Destiny could drag me on. Hmm. Hmm. Okay. I think I'm gonna go. Probably. I haven't been streaming for an hour. Um. But yes, I think that I will head out for today. And then maybe I'll stream later today. We'll see. I love you all. Actually, no, I've got D&D. I will stream more often. I think I'll probably stream tomorrow. Au revoir. I love you. And I'll stream on Twitch, so there'll be more people.